Hey guys, Sly here, and before we get into this video, I just want to let you guys know that this is actually a re-upload of a part of a series that I do on my Twitch channel called the Sly Army Tierlists, where we pretty much rank a bunch of just random topics that I'm personally interested in. And so, because of that, these opinions are not set in stone for how I feel about in the current day. And so if you guys want a more updated version of that, feel free to either check out the DeviantArt link down below or tune in on my Twitch that will also be in the description, or check out my Discord where I occasionally post some more updated versions of how I feel about certain topics. And so do keep that in mind. And also make sure to check out the description of the video itself for the timestamps for the particular topic that is presented here. But in any event, I hope you guys do at least enjoy. I recommend you guys listen to this as either like a podcast form or as just something to play in the background. But in any event, hope you guys at least enjoy. Hey guys, Sly here for yet another episode of the Sly Army Tier Lists. So tonight, we are in fact doing something that I was originally going to do earlier this month, but then it kept getting delayed. So, well, I'm doing it now before the end of the month. We are in fact doing the Star Wars movie and TV show tier list. So, yeah, I can't believe I actually haven't done this earlier, considering that, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. For fuck's sake, look, I've got the shirt on, as I typically do, but more importantly, as you guys probably know, some of my favorite games of all time, including the original Battlefront 2, and is one of my favorite games of all time. And there's other games that I've streamed on here before, such as Dark Forces and Republic Commando, and Jedi Fallen Order that I've played. And yeah, no, it's a franchise that holds near and dear to my heart. And yeah, it's kind of surprising that I haven't really gotten into that. Before I get into sort of just the background, at least for me, and what we're doing here, I do want to let you guys know that there are a couple of announcements that I got for you guys. Number one, I have finally got to speed with adding every tier list that I have done up to this point and adding it to my YouTube channel. As of right now, the latest one that I have uploaded is the Fall Out Boy albums tier list. So if you guys want to check those out, feel free to do so. The next one should be the FNAF characters tier list, and I will make sure that gets uploaded by tomorrow, along with the Hitman tier list. So that'll be pretty nice. And yeah, I'll make sure to get these all preserved over there, as well as my old podcast episodes that I did, which, speaking of, tomorrow we'll also have a podcast episode that I did mention and allude to earlier this week, but obviously that's for tomorrow. But regardless, though, I hope you guys at least do enjoy these, and I hope you guys continue to keep watching these. If you guys want to see more of these, make sure to hit that follow button down below and tell the bell icon so that you'll be notified exactly when I stream. I know I've been a bit iffy, but again, there's just been a lot of things been going on, considering that, well, there's a lot of background stuff, at least in terms of just my personal life, that I don't want to get into right now, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, there's been a lot that's been going on, and so I hope you guys at least respect that. But yeah, either way though, yeah, like I said, check out, hit that follow button. We're currently on the road to 200 followers. Feel free to hit that, and again, feel free to check out the YouTube channel down below in the panels down there, as well as everything else, DeviantArt, Discord, SoundCloud, Humble Bundle affiliation, as it directly supports me. And yeah, but regardless though, let's talk about this. So again, you can probably tell this is not ranking all the Star Wars games. Maybe that will be a separate tier list at some point in the future, but as of right now, we're just going to be focusing solely on every single movie that has been released since 1977, and of course every single show that has probably been released through that entire point. And that's mostly just due to the fact that when you're ranking a game with Star Wars, it is completely different than like trying to rank, like a show or a movie because of just the length. And since you're more actively involved, that can change how, the storytelling is done. And so, but also, honestly, it would be another like 5-6 hour stream. And frankly, I don't really have time for that, or at least not right now. But yeah, either way, yeah, I guess we'll just kind of, before we get into the actual list, I'm just also going to express that this one is a bit more personal, at least for me, because yes, Sly Cooper is my favorite game series of all time. If I am going to be a bit honest, Star Wars might at least be the most popular franchise that people know that holds the closest to me, if that makes sense. Like, again, you guys probably know me. I'm not really the type of person who really likes a lot of the mainstream stuff. I don't like Harry Potter. I hate fork knife. We do not say the actual word of the actual thing. I don't really care for Marvel. I don't really care for DC. Um, Jurassic Parks, whatever. Um, Fucking what else? Like Mario stuff, Nintendo stuff, like fucking Coldplay or Imagine Dragons, like mainstream stuff. I will admit I am not like the biggest fan of. I'm typically more of an underdog fan, where a lot of the stuff I like is well respected, but like it's not like the most household name that you would ever know. Like again, like Ratchet and Clank is a well-known game series, but like outside of the gaming circles, you haven't really heard of it, you know? Or at least obviously Sly Cooper in my case. I love it. But again, outside of Sony PlayStation circles, you don't really talk about Sly Cooper all that much. Um and shit, even like when it comes to like, television shows or whatever. Like again, Avatar Last Airbender. Okay, maybe not Avatar, but like My Life's Teenage Robot. That's a better example. It's my favorite Nicktoon. But outside of Nicktoon and Nickelodeon circles, no one talks about it that much. Like, you don't declare it like the best show of all time or anything like that. So I'm a bit more of a niche person in terms of just my interests. However, Star Wars is admittedly one of the main exceptions. It is a franchise that I've held dear to my heart ever since around 2005 ish, which will be reflective on a couple of the rankings here. And, around the time whenever I started to actually not only learn about the movies, but also just kind of learn about, some of the games that were coming out at that time and just the overall universe. And yeah, like it's an interesting universe. It's actually kind of interesting because now I feel like Star Wars as just a franchise has transcended it from being just, sort of like this fictional, like, phenomena. Like it transcended to becoming like, being just beyond being a pop cultural like thing. It's become like honestly kind of a staple of just a lot of people's lives, which you don't really see that for many other franchises. Like, even like something like Marvel or something, like, people are like, yeah, that's awesome, but, it's not really something that's tied to like my everyday life. But Star Wars has been around for 46 years. Well, 47 if you count the original 1976 novel, but that's a whole other can of worms. And yeah, like it's actually kind of insane to think just how much it has just changed a lot of people. Like, it got many people, it created friendships, it created, amazing characters. It brought, a lot of, you know, actors and musicians to the mainstream that otherwise probably wouldn't have even gotten a career. And not only that, but also just the absolute just amazing storylines that happens throughout like all the different media that does revolve around this franchise. Like it's insane. And yeah, like again, it's transcended from being just a pop cultural like staple, which I can't say that for many other franchises. And again, say what you want about George Lucas. I meme about him all the time. Or at least maybe not necessarily on stream, but like whenever I'm talking with other friends, I joke about George Lucas all the time. But if there's one thing I do have to give him credit where credit is due, is basically just help building the roots for not just this franchise, but how we see science fiction media as a whole. Like, I mean, let's be real here. Like, I mean, the only other like major science fiction franchises that existed beforehand, I would definitely say would be Star Trek and Doctor Who, which, you know, I respect Doctor Who a lot. Like, it was one of the TV shows I used to watch all the time whenever I was in middle school. And like, while I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, I do recognize that a lot of people also really respect it. However, Star Wars was like the first science fiction series that really set the bar for what a science fiction series could look like. Like, without the elements of this franchise, I doubt anything like Halo or Warhammer 40K or Destiny or Mass Effect or Battleship Galactica, Stargate, like, maybe they would have some elements here and there and they would still be around, or but like they wouldn't be, you know, the way that they are, because Star Wars basically opened the floodgates for expanding it just beyond being, you know, just a small group of people. It's a whole galaxy's worth of just stories to tell. And so because of that, like, it's way more interesting, at least to me, than, and something that I respect way more than probably people do nowadays, which understandably so, ever since 2012, with Disney buying out the licenses and the rights to not just Star Wars, but everything Lucasfilms related. It's been granted, I know as well that people have had issues with the Star Wars brand, at least vocally, ever since like the late 90s, after the special editions came out, and of course people had issues with the prequel movies, and shit, I'd even argue that like there's always been controversy with Star Wars ever since around the time of Return of the Jedi. So, which of course yesterday was its 40th anniversary, but of course we'll get to that. We'll get to Return of the Jedi in a little bit, but again, it's something that, like, whether you love it or hate it, you can't deny that it's one of the biggest media franchises of all time. And it has had its ups and downs, but it's been around for 45 plus years for a reason. And all I can really hope is that people, whether it be like fans or even like people working on Star Wars, at the very least, they give it respect. Granted, it's kind of in a bit of a muddy situation right now. I get that. But one can still hope for things to get better. And that's what I want to basically do with this. So, with that said, though, of course, let's actually get into the tierings themselves. I know I took a little bit longer here, but it's for good reason, because I wanted to make sure that I just proved a point. So obviously this is different than what we typically do. So we've got the tierings of, well, yeah, we've got at the very bottom is Jar Jar Binks, because, you know, it's Jar Jar, so of course. And then you got Apprentice, as in Jedi Apprentice, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, and then at the top is the Chosen Ones. So, or Chosen Ones, as I'll do it here. So, yeah. So that's going to be tierings. And then, of course, we have a haven't seen tier. However, I'm going to add one more tier here, because I'm just going to... I need to make this preference and let people know. Yeah, I need to address a few elephants in the room. All these don't exist. and you cannot convince me that they exist. So don't at me. Now we got that out of the way. God, I know I seemed like an asshole there, but I don't care. I don't care about any of that. That's the only time I'm going to acknowledge all of those. Don't make me otherwise. Okay, so I think actually what I want to do here, though, is I actually want to rank them by when everything came out. So, which means I am going to have to change things a little bit. So, yes, so yeah, New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi, yes, and then yeah, Phantom Menace, and then Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, and then the Clone Wars, and then Rebels. Which some of these some of these shows we actually have talked about before, and so I will make sure that I won't take as long talking about them. But do keep in mind that they exist, and we'll do it. Like, if you want my more in-depth opinions on some of these, like some of the shows, go check out either my Disney Channel tier list, or in the case of the Clone Wars shows, my Cartoon Network tier lists. So, because yeah, I've got some interesting takes when it comes to those, and yeah, people might be interested in those. Yes, I think this is everything in release order. I don't remember. Okay, whatever. Okay, so yeah, we'll do everything starting with the original 1977 release of A New Hope, obviously called Star Wars, and then we'll work all our way up to Andor, which released last September. So yeah, this shouldn't be too long of a stream. I don't think I really need to say too much else. Again, keep in mind, this does not include video games. This includes only TV shows and the movies. Also, keep in mind that the Clone Wars 2008 movie is not on here, specifically because I am counting that as a pilot for the Clone Wars. I'm not counting it as a separate thing. So do keep that in mind. That's why that's not on here, because I know it was released in theaters, but it's a pilot. It's a glorified pilot. That's what it is. So, actually, before we get into the tierings, I'm gonna get a drink. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Got my water. So, I think I got all the criteria out of the way. Also, okay, one more thing. Just keep in mind that this is actually my personal opinion. So, if you disagree with me, I'm glad about that. As a matter of fact, you can disagree with me all you want. Just don't be an asshole about it. Also, actually, I will say one more thing as well. If you guys probably saw my recent Twitter post I made, you guys probably already have an idea of what I'm going to be, where I'm going to be putting some of these in terms of the tiering, because I did like a bit of a preview on Twitter. So, granted, I don't know if I don't know if those positions would be the same positions I would have on here, but I'm gonna redo it anyways. It's my stream. Deal with it. But yeah, no, again, this is just my personal opinion. And when it comes to the Star Wars fan base, no matter what you're going to do, you're never, like, no one's ever going to agree. It's like the FNAF community, like, or like even like the Halo community. Like, it's no matter what I say, like, I'm never gonna make everyone happy. So I've just accepted that at this point. But let's get into this, starting with the original movie from 1977, Star Wars, or as it has been now recently been named, New Hope. So yeah, I think you would be putting this as I think you would be doing a massive disservice if you put this below average. Because, like, this is the first film, and not only that, but also, this set the standard for basically just cinema up until that point. Not many other movies from the 70s had this large of a scope. Like, I can't think of any other movie around that time. I mean, obviously, there were other movies that, are considered pop cultural icons now, Dirty Harry, Jaws, The Exorcist. Um, like there was like those were like pretty big in the 70s, but I don't think you can really say that like there's not any other like in terms of like massive starts for pop culture. You would be putting a disservice if you put this in like below a master. Like, though I will admit I don't know if I want to put it in the chosen ones though. I will put it in master for now. It's a good film. It's a good start. And oh, by the way, we are not factoring in everything involving the special editions. We're only going to be counting, like, we're only going to be, like, I guess we're going to pick and choose what we personally like. Because I've actually seen both the original 1977 version cut of this film, because back in 2008, they actually re-released all of the original trilogy films, where they had the special editions from 2004 packaged with the original, like, release from 1977. So I've actually seen both versions of all three of these like films. So do keep that in mind. Again, it's not going to factor too much, but yeah. So, and yeah, no, it still holds up to this day. Like, it's set a big, it has a pretty good setup of, establishing our main characters, establishing like the giant threat, actually having consequences of, everything. And honestly, it's a good beginning of the typical hero's tale, because a lot of Star Wars was influenced by both Western films as well as old samurai films, as well as like old, like, East Asian, like, far East Asian legends from like Japan and China. I'd say Journey to the West was probably the biggest influence on this film specifically. And obviously, yes, it's taking those elements, but it's like, it's kind of telling it into its own new thing. And guess what? I think it works. Like, and of course, I'm missing the iconic performances that were produced, that were like showcased by Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and then Carrie Fisher as Leia, rest in peace. And then of course James Earl Jones as Darth Vader's voice. I forgot who actually played him in person. But yeah, and of course, Anthony, I forgot his last name as C-3PO. But basically, yeah, no, like, this is a really good, not only start, but also just an amazing film, at least on a production standpoint. That being said, though, this did have a very troubled production. Like, it is no secret that this film, actually, I like to compare this to the original Final Fantasy by Square Enix, where, this was almost George Lucas's last film. Which is funny because Final Fantasy was almost Square's last game. Because, like, George Lucas was not doing well at all here. And it was almost a disaster. And it was only until, like, I think George Lucas's wife, who actually finally got, like, the film edited to where it actually looked good. And so, it's actually kind of amazing that this movie turned out the way that it did. Because, like, my God, like, wow, this is impressive for its time. And like I said, it still holds up. Granted, again, I don't put it in chosen one because there are some weak elements of this film. Obviously, we can talk about the lame fucking fight between Obi-Wan or Ben Kenobi in this case, and Vader. We can talk about that every day of the week. We can also talk about how in the original version of the movie, the weird, like, Death Star thing where the Stormtroopers just realize that there's more of them than between fighting Han and Chewie. And, like, some weird, goofy stuff like that. But some of those were actually fixed in the special editions. And, again, you gotta, like, it's such an old film now And you guys know me. Rarely ever talk about anything pre 1990. The only other tier list that we've talked about anything pre 1990 was the Christmas tier list, and then the grunge tier list as well. But like especially like those are the only separate times. So, and it's mostly just because that's just before my time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To wrap this point up, I respect this film. It's a master. It's not perfect, though. That's why it's going in master. So, what is going in higher, though, is, of course, The Empire Strikes Back. Of course, I'm putting it in the chosen one. Anyone who would be putting it underneath is being dishonest, because there's a reason why this is considered by many to be the best sequel of all time. Because, it expanded upon the universe that was established, and it had a lot more character. Obviously, there was a lot of character fleshing out in A New Hope, but in Empire, there was some interesting character development that was going on, especially with Han Solo, who, even though he had a bit of a change in heart at the end of A New Hope, he was still kind of more focused on the money overall. But by the end of this film, he came to realize that at the end of the day, that's not what matters. What matters is that, well, the Empire kind of sucks. And, considering how he started to feel more attached with Leia, that's a very, honestly kind of a soft, transition that I'm surprised not a lot of people talk about. And even just beyond that, obviously, Luke learning more about the ways of the Jedi, and his interactions with Yoda. Yes, Yoda was introduced here. I'm glad that. Well, I'm glad that sort of just showcasing of two different mindsets, and Luke being like in the mindset of like, I gotta stop Vader because otherwise all my friends are gonna get killed, and the rebellion's going to get destroyed, and the Empire is just going to rule for who knows how long. But Yoda is like, you have to learn how to be patient. Like, and I mean, hell, like even like that's exemplified. By the way, I'm just going to be speaking spoilers. I know spoilers for a 43-year-old movie, but if you haven't seen any of these, it should be obvious by the actual nature of the stream. But I mean, that exemplifies with the infamous line with Yoda, where Luke tries to, lift his X-Wing from, sinking into the water in Dagobah. And, he's just more focused on the actual action and getting it done rather than taking his time. That's the whole point of, do. There is no try. That's the whole, there's a lot of just more philosophical elements that George Lucas added in the script. He didn't direct this film. That was someone else. I forgot the actual director of this film. But, just sort of a lot of those just just a lot of those, character development moments I appreciate. And not only that, but also showcasing that, the good guys don't always have to win to make a good movie. Guess what? The bad guys win in this movie. So, which, is, especially by this time, was a breath of fresh air, considering that most media, at this time at least, didn't want to bother with, sad endings. Or, I wouldn't say sad endings in this case, but more just bittersweet, but solid endings, if that makes sense. And, well, and of course, of course, we can also talk about the most infamous plot twist in any movie of all time, where Luke, of course, confronts Vader. He's like, "That's not true." Oh wait, no, he doesn't say that. He's like, "He said you killed him." No, I am your father. No, it can't be. And yeah, that's a very infamous, that obviously at its time was the biggest plot twist in cinema history. And obviously we can, like, I can gush more about this film, but you guys probably already know at this point, and I probably wouldn't even be giving justice even more. Long story short, not only is this one of the better films in the series, but yeah, I can see, like, I think you can definitely say that this is just the best film in the Star Wars franchise. Like, it's been 43 years. Sorry, I'm trying to. Sorry. Oh my god, sorry, I'm looking up the director's name. But basically, it's been 43 years, and it's kind of surprising that, like, there hasn't been a film that has rivaled up with Empire. We've gotten close, and admittedly, this is not my favorite film in the series, in the franchise. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's actually kind of interesting that there's still people who do regard this as the best. Fair. And I definitely see it. And I actually do agree. It's interesting, though, because normally, you know, a new movie comes out, it blows people out of the water. But I guess it also just really, you know, is a testament to how well this film has stood the test of time. And I gotta respect it. And of course, again, I could also talk about other things like, you know, the Battle of Hoth being a very impressive, you know, battle sequence. Again, the whole Dagobah sequence, the Cloud City chase, the introduction of Palpatine, although obviously special editions changed the original guy with Ian McDiarmid. But yeah, like, it's an amazing film. Even if you don't appreciate Star Wars, I would still at least recommend you guys watch New Hope and Empire. And of course, that leads us to, oh, by the way, the director is Irvin Kershner. He's the director of Empire, not George Lucas. George Lucas was the writer. So, but yeah, that then leads us to Return of the Jedi from 1983. Oh, by the way, Empire, 1980. New Hope, I said, was 1977, 1983. So keep that pattern in mind, because it is probably going to showcase to you guys the quality of later stuff with Star Wars. But anyways, so yeah, we got Return of the Jedi. So if I'm going to be honest, and this might seem disrespectful considering that yesterday was its 40th anniversary, I still like some elements in this film. Obviously, this was the introduction of Ian McDiarmid's Palpatine, and that in and of itself is amazing. Like, oh, I'm afraid it is you who are mistaken about a great many things. Like, God, such a great character. He's just, God, Emperor, like, Palpatine is just so great, and I'm glad that he was introduced here, because, again, obviously, you know, Vader being, you know, one of the most iconic villains of all time, you know, obviously, he came from somewhere, right? Guess what? He has a master, so naturally he would have to have someone more evil than him. And, which then leads to the other thing, you know, the redemption of Darth Vader back to Anakin. That's, you know, something that a lot of people just, I think, take for granted nowadays, but it really did showcase that, like, even someone who you might consider to be one of the most evil people, they can still have a moment to be able to redeem themselves. Now, granted, obviously, since there's been tons of Star Wars media, and, you know, there's been tons of things that has been shown to have been done by Darth Vader, like, maybe some people might start seeing it's a bit more of a stretch, especially if, you know, we start seeing Vader do more, frankly, terrible fucking things. It at least does showcase, though, that, like, as much as someone can be, like, be truly pure evil, they can still at least have a little bit of good in them. And someone like Luke Skywalker, who is a complete badass in this film, by the way, is able to bring them out of that darkness back into the light. And it only takes for someone to be even more evil than Vader for him to finally come to terms that, yeah, this is fucked. Like, again, the Death Star 2 sequences here, honestly, I consider to be some of the best parts in Star Wars media, like, just period. And just, Luke just trying to continuously coax Vader away from the dark side is something that honestly is just kind of, it's poetic. Also, the Death Star battle sequences here, like, the space battle, a lot of people do consider to be one of the best, directed just battles in just cinema history. And yeah, no, it's a pretty good scene as well. I think my biggest issues, however, with this film is honestly the first act with Jabba's palace and the Ewoks. Jabba's palace, I'm sorry, but I think that whole sequence just, it takes just a little bit, like the whole Jabba Tatooine, the whole thing. I think it's just a bit too long, and it overstays its welcome. Granted, I know it's, obviously you gotta free Han, because Han, spoiler alert again for a 43-year-old film, gets captured and he gets imprisoned in carbonite, which is basically just a giant fucking prison cell. And it's sent to Jabba because he needed to pay his debt, but he never did. So, well, sucks for him, I guess. So they have to obviously free him, which, yeah, fair enough. But again, it just feels like it overstays his welcome. And honestly, I never really liked those scenes. Like, even as a kid, I was like, this is dragging just a bit too long. Granted, Jabba's puppetry is amazing. Like, for like, even just like nowadays, it's impressive just how they were even to, like, move that puppet. Like, my god, it's actually insane. And whoever did the puppeteering, I have to do like major props to you guys. Like, bravo, you guys did amazing. But I don't know, everything else about that just don't even get me started with the Ewoks. Like, I know Star Wars has had goofy shit. Like, A New Hope is extremely fucking goofy. But again, it's the first film, so I can forgive it. But the Ewoks, man, like, I don't know. Like, I've always found them to be annoying, and also just a bit too absurd to have fucking won the actual ground battle on Endor. Like, what the fuck? Like, suspension of disbelief just broke a little bit for me. Granted, I know, like, some people always try to counter it, being like, okay, but the stormtroopers, they weren't able to know what they were doing. Okay, then explain the beginning of the New Hope, where, they completely just take over the fucking blockade runner. Again, people like to meme on stormtroopers, but they're, like, at least in universe, they're actually more competent than people want to give them credit. But whatever. So, that being said, though, just out of just respect, I am going to put this in Master, though I am one of the people who does agree that this is the weakest film, but it's still a good film. It's a good finale. And if only if it was only a finale, or at least a finale for, like, our main characters. Because, yeah, no, it's a pretty good film. And again, the original trilogy, I would still recommend to anyone, even if you don't care for Star Wars, even if it's like, even just for the sake of, like, a trilogy, I would still recommend it because, it's the hero's tale, done really well. Obviously, in this case, it's Luke's hero's tale from, being just a farm boy to basically being, a very powerful but humble individual who's able to, bring back even the most corrupt and dark, like, evil people back to being good again. Granted, that person unfortunately did die. Vader died. Should be obvious. I know, spoilers for a 40-year-old film, but whatever. But just at least see the redemption arc done. is commendable. And yeah, no, like that's all I got to say about Return of the Jedi. It's a good film, and I do respect it, even if it's not my favorite. So, yeah. Of course, Star Wars was a bit dormant for a while. Like, after 1983, there really wasn't a lot of, big Star Wars projects throughout the remainder of the 80s. As a matter of fact, I call basically the years between 1984 and 1992 to kind of be like the Star Wars dark age, where there just wasn't anything just being made, or anything that was made was just terrible. So some people might say that we're living in another dark age. Fair enough, but yeah, there just wasn't really anything of note. However, starting around 1992 and 93, video games for Star Wars have started to come about. Even original, stories started to come out, such as with Star Wars X-Wing and Dark Forces and Rebel Assault. And that garnered a lot of interest from people to want to have a new set of Star Wars movies. And it wouldn't be until 1997 when filming would start, and that film would not release until 1999 with The Phantom Menace. So, if I'm going to be honest, I've got some beef with people. Because this is the first of the prequel trilogy. And I'm just going to be frank right now. I'm not one of those people who hates all of the prequel films. Because this is always a contentious point with so many people about whether the movies suck or if they're amazing. I'm just one of those people who doesn't care about them being a trilogy, and more or less just them being their own individual films. Because you can't, in this particular case, usually I'm someone who is, you have to judge things as a whole. And if we were doing that, then, if I'm gonna be honest, most of these fucking things would be, not very high. But in the case of a film, you have to chunk, and especially with trilogies, you have to, look at them individually. Obviously, I did that with the original trilogy here. And I didn't blindly put them all in Chosen One, because there's flaws in those films. But as a whole, they're good. With the prequels, it's more selective. And I'm just gonna be frank, I got some personal beef with people. Obviously, I was born, around the time when the prequels were starting to be, filmed and made. So, if you couldn't tell. So I grew up with those films. However, I never liked The Phantom Menace. I never liked it. I've always found it to be super boring. I found it to be extremely aggravating to watch. I never thought that, I just thought it was fucking boring. And usually I'm not the type of person who gets pissed off at boring films that much. But I'm sorry, but we've got our first dud here. I'm putting this in Jar Jar. I don't like Phantom Menace. I don't like Phantom Menace. It actually kind of annoys me as well. This is something that actually annoys me even more. I remember whenever I started hearing about people shitting on all the prequel films, that people thought that Phantom Menace was the worst film out of the prequels. However, in more recent years, I've been noticing that people have been saying Attack of the Clones is the worst film. And we'll talk about that in a second, but really? Are you kidding me? Dude, this film has multiple, honestly, almost blatantly just racial stereotypes that even by then was kind of stretching it. But also, dude, this film is just unnecessary. You can literally take this film out in the entire just Star Wars franchise and you would not miss anything. It's such a bleh of a film. Like the only good thing to come out of this, okay, there's a few things I admittedly, is Darth Maul, because Darth Maul is amazing. But even then, in this film, he's not really he's just a lackey. He just doesn't really have a lot of character. They would add character to him later down the line, but he's not really a great villain in this film. Because he's just kind of, the antagonist force. He's not like Vader, where, he has depth. No, he's just a henchman. Of course, we're not even going to talk about Gunray. Gunray's a lame villain as well. But also, like, sorry, so yeah, that's already stretching it. Also, the music, though, Duel of Fates is amazing. I will fight anyone who says that the Duel of Fates is a bad song. You don't know what you're talking about. That song is amazing. And the other thing, personally, I'm biased about that, but I actually like the concept of, a droid army. Like, granted, I prefer the clones, but come on, you gotta give at least a little bit of love to a droid army. Like, of course, I'm a bit biased because some of my favorite, series have a lot of, like, robot characters in them. Some a bit more closer than others, but, like, I don't know. I just think that's kind of cool. But that's about it, if I'm going to be honest. Like, just, the fact that, like, this film relies so much on plot convenience, where, they go to Naboo, and then Palpatine wants them dead, but then, it turns out he didn't want them dead, and he was just using that as, like, a decoy or whatever, and then they invade the planet, and then, they then somehow go on Tatooine, where they just so happen to find Anakin, who, is extremely force sensitive, and just so happens to be, has a high midichlorian count. Like, I'm not one of those people who hates midichlorians, but I'm talking about the fact that the plot contrivances in this film are so fucking stupid. Like, granted, there's one film that beats it over the head, but we'll get to that later. But I'm sorry, this film sucks. Like, even as a kid, I hated it, and nowadays, I just get super fucking bored every time I try rewatching it. It's not a good film. It sucks. And yeah, like, and no pod racing scene. I'm gonna take this off. No pod racing scene is going to change my mind. I never liked the pod races. I thought they looked dumb. And yeah, I never liked this film. This film sucks. You're not gonna change my mind. So, again, I don't even need to even mention Jar Jar Binks. Granted, I don't get as annoyed as some people with him, but again, racial stereotypes are kind of cringe. So, yeah, it's just a bad film. It's, oh god. All right. Well, speaking of films that aren't really respected, we got Attack of the Clones. So, I'm just gonna say this right now. Yes, Elephant in the Room is the Naboo scenes. Obviously, I wouldn't be hard-pressed if I didn't hear about anyone talk about the, I don't like sand. It's coarse, rough, and it gets everywhere. Like, I know that makes so many people cringe. And, like, honestly, people also just dog on Hayden Christensen, like, specifically in this film. And, even just, like, other things, such as, like, the droid factory scene and the final lightsaber duel, which I will admit, I will contest to this. The lightsaber duel in this movie is not that great. It is a bit underwhelming. Excuse me. Which, yeah, I didn't even mention that. Like, that was another, yeah, that's something I didn't actually, like, bring up about the original trilogy, other than with A New Hope, is the lightsaber duels. Yeah, the lightsaber duels in Return of the Jedi and Empire, at least, like, yeah, the one in Empire was pretty good. Phantom Menace was also amazing in that regard, which is one thing that, like, at least with Phantom Menace and with Revenge of the Sith, which is coming up later, do get really right. And so to kind of see, this be, the fight that happens, yeah, I can see why people were disappointed with it. Yeah. Granted, I will say this though. I am not as harsh with this film as many others are, especially people on YouTube. I know. I said that. I know I said something that is extremely heretical. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I think people harp on this movie specifically because of the romance sequences. I know they're bad. I know they're super cheesy. But if they were taking out of the film, I think people would have a way higher opinion of this film. Because it's only, in my at least in my opinion, it's only the second act, specifically involving that stuff, that makes this movie bad. Like, if they only had it to where it was like the Obi-Wan stuff, or shit, I'll even say this, if it was just Anakin and Padme, but like with the Tatooine stuff, I think the movie would be like way more respected. I think it'd be fine. What else is there? Oh yeah, what else is positive about this film? Not Boba Fett. Jango Fett versus Obi-Wan. I thought that was a good scene. Of course, the Battle of Geonosis itself, I've always found to be pretty impressive. Because, this was one of the first times we had like a major CGI battle like that. Yeah, I know Phantom Menace had that, but that has aged poorly. This one was done way better, even if it doesn't make any militaristic logistic sense. Also, here's my hot take about this film. I think people completely misunderstood the whole point of the Tusken Raider scene, because they misconstrue it with Revenge of the Sith. Basically, that was supposed to be the whole Tusken Raider scene is supposed to be the beginning of when Anakin starts his fall to the dark side. It was the death of his mother that resulted in him going into this blind rage of just killing all these guys. And again, that's not me like excusing him in the film. That's just to point out that, like, yeah, this kid is kind of unhinged. And here's something that's probably going to piss off even more people. I don't hate Hayden Christensen's acting. I'm sorry. It makes sense, at least in the context of the film. Like, granted, am I saying that it's a masterclass performance? Fuck no. Like, I would rather have like anyone else. Okay, maybe not anyone else, but like, if I am gonna be honest, like, yeah, no, it's not like a great performance. But like, he's acting awkward because he was isolated in the Jedi Temple. Like, and again, he's like, I think he's like, what, 18 or 19 in the context, by this point in the universe. So, like, it makes sense why he's acting like that. So, granted, I'm a little bit biased as well, because if I'm just gonna be frank, Anakin is probably my personal favorite character from Star Wars. Granted, that was more solidified with the Clone Wars TV show, but he's fine. It's just only whenever he's in the Naboo stuff. And also, I'm just going to be frank right now. Like, I never really cringed at a lot of the dialogue that he did. As a matter of fact, every time he says all his shit, I actually die laughing. It's funny. It's not cringy. It's funny. So, whatever. It's an average film. I think James Rolfe of Cinemassacre / VGN fame said it best. The film is average. I think people are way too harsh on this film. Like, and it's specifically because of the certain scenes. Again, Phantom Menace is worse. Way fucking worse. I'd rather watch Attack of the Clones. Which, speaking of, that's the other good thing about this film. No Attack of the Clones, no Clone Troopers, i.e., no Clone Wars. Which I don't know if you know this about me, but the Clone Wars is my favorite like era in Star Wars. Like it's always been something that I've always been interested in, even as a kid. Just whether it be like the actual like the military technology of both the CIS and the Republic, or even just sort of the strings in the background being pulled by Palpatine, and Dooku in this conflict, and like stuff like that. I've always found that to be so fascinating. Granted, it's just done with just a little bit like in bits and pieces in the film, obviously to be fleshed out later down the line. But I don't know, man. I can't bring myself to hate this film. I am gonna put it in Apprentice though. It's not the worst Star Wars film by a fucking mile. Like anyone who still says this is the worst film, I'm sorry, but you're stuck in 2003. Like Jesus Christ, man. There's been way fucking worse released. And like I said, Phantom Menace, I think is way worse. So sue me. Alright, so, okay, we are starting to get to a few things that we have talked about before. I am just going to make some of these quick. Yeah, Tarkovsky's Clone Wars. This has a 20th anniversary this year. We've talked about this several times before. I'm not going to repeat myself. I am going to put this at a master. It's really good. It's really good. Go watch it. If you like more visual storytelling, I do recommend it. It has its issues, though. I think that it relies too much on just constant action to where it can get a bit monotonous. And there's not a lot of like character growth from anyone in this series. That wouldn't really come until 2008's Clone Wars. But I recommend it. It's still really good. I just wish it was canon, but Disney's allergic to anything that is like, pre-2012 Star Wars. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Honestly, I feel like they're just kind of allergic to anything prequel related, so but whatever. Which, speaking of, we got our last film. Well, if it wasn't obvious before, with the shirt, with the type of games that I like, with, the type of eras that I like when it comes to Star Wars, this is a bit more personal for me. And you guys probably don't know this, but this, Revenge of the Sith, is actually the first Star Wars film I've ever watched in theaters. And not only that, but this is also, as far as I can remember, is one of the first films I've ever watched in theaters. Period. I know, shocker. Like, you wouldn't have thought that from me. So yeah, because of that, I am a bit more biased than most people. And I will fully admit this. This film is not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. There are some flaws, especially, at the very end of the film, which, spoilers for a 18-year-old film by this point. Padme dies. Oh yeah, I didn't mention Padme as much. She's Anakin's, wife. So, and she obviously is Luke and also Leia's mother. Because I forgot to mention that Leia is Luke's. Yeah. Which I know that I should have probably mentioned the fucking elephant in the room about the early Star Wars films where you see Luke and Leia do some weird stuff, especially in hindsight. But whatever, let's fucking ignore that right now. I like that anyways with Padme, where it's like she was able to give birth, but she lost the will to live. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty goofy. Also there, the exchanges between Anakin and Padme, they're not as awkward as in Attack of the Clones, but like they're still kind of So, yeah, But other than that, and again, I'm admitting I'm biased here. This is my favorite Star Wars film. There, I said it. I don't care what people say. This is the best Star Wars film to come out in the past, like, 25 years. And this is as close as we can get to Empire Strikes Back. Granted, I'm a bit more biased because, again, I prefer the Clone Wars era. But also, this one just... In terms of Star Wars films, this is probably the darkest film in the entire franchise. Like, I know Rise of Skywalker tried doing shit like that, but we'll get to that mess later. But yeah, this is probably, like, at least in terms of, like, the mainline movies, this is probably the darkest that Star Wars has actually ever gotten. Because this film can get actually way more violent than I actually remember it being. Yeah, you see, like, full-on, like, clone troopers just getting absolutely murked by Yoda and Obi-Wan. Because, again, yes, spoilers again. Fucking Order you guys probably know by now. Who doesn't know Order 66 because of the memes? So, yeah, of course, you see clone troopers just straight up just executing so many goddamn people. But even just beyond that, like, this film I think really just shows the strengths of not only, like, more modern movies, or at least more modern at the time, because, this is almost a 20-year-old film by this point, which that makes me depressed inside. God damn. But it was but also, like, it really showed, like, I think the best strengths for each of the characters here. Hayden Christensen, it does a, generally speaking, way better performance in this film, as Anakin, because, he's more mature, but he's still unhinged, which obviously gets reflected on what's gonna happen later. And then Obi-Wan, of course, Ewan McGregor, I've always thought was actually really good as Obi-Wan, so to see him continue his performance here is great. And just the mood. Again, I've mentioned this plenty of times before. I'm someone who does like it whenever a film has lighthearted moments, but I like it when my media takes itself seriously. That's why I think that Sly 2 and 3 are two of my favorite games of all time. Or, like, the Halo games. I like it whenever there's a more serious tone. And, well, this is a movie that probably gets, like, it hits the nail in terms of that tone perfectly. And, the battle sequences are phenomenally shot, like, and also, like, yes, this is the definition of a green screen film. Like, this film probably was filmed more indoors than any other Star Wars film, which might annoy some people, but admittedly, that typically annoys me as well. But this is a film where it's like, it was kind of unavoidable, at least with what Lucas wanted to actually showcase. And yeah, no, like, I think it paid off way better than I thought than it probably should have. And of course, let's not forget about the lightsaber battles, specifically, of course, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, which I'd say has become the most iconic lightsaber battle in any Star Wars media. And I know there's some motherfuckers out there who are like, oh, it looks so fucking unrealistic. It just looks so fucking, like, choreographed. Okay, shut the fuck up. I don't care. Like, also, there's a reason for that. It's because these two guys are, like, two of the best, lightsaber duelists. So, of fucking course, it's going to be, like, it's going to, like, look very choreographed, because they've been doing this shit for fucking years, at least in lore. So yeah, no, like, I don't fucking care what people say. It's still amazing, and also, like, I don't know, like, I'm sorry, I fucking hate it when people shit on that specific moment, like, or really just this movie in general, because it's just people just blindly hating all of the fucking prequel films, when it's only really, like, one of them was really fucking bad, One of them is just only average at best, and then the last one is really good, but people just don't give a shit about it because it has some weird dialogue moments, even though fucking 1977 Star Wars literally has Luke and Leia kissing each other. Granted, I know this was before fucking Return of the Jedi, but point is, I think this film was amazing. It's my personal favorite Star Wars film. Is it the best Star Wars film? No. Empire Strikes Back is easily the best film. But I still love this film. I'm biased because this is one of the first films I saw in theaters. And I'm glad for that. And also, again, it actually it's also another film that has a very sad, ending to it. And it also showcases that, the bad guys can win. And they actually win hard. Like the stakes, and again, even though we already know what's going to happen to at least some of the characters, because, again, it's a prequel, all the other characters, there's a lot, the stakes were, higher. And, I like that. I like how, it set a bigger precedent. So, but yeah, I'm going on this fucking, tangent for way too long. But point is that, I don't fucking care what people say. This film is good. I know where the hate is coming from, but I disagree with the hate. If you genuinely don't like this film, though, then fine. But don't just blindly hate it. That's all I'm going to say. So, obviously, you shouldn't just blindly love it either. I'm not someone who, just fucking loves it. I don't just fucking love it. I actually like it for XYZ reasons. And it's also just beyond the fucking memes, because I know this film also has the most memes out of all the fucking films. I'm even just putting that shit aside. Granted, a lot of those are hilarious. Anytime that Palpatine has, a moment, it's amazing. And people meme it because of that. But again, I'm even just looking at it at its face value. And in terms of story progression, in terms of, cinematography, in terms of just the environmental design, and in terms of just, dialogue, especially in comparison to the previous two films. Yeah, no, this is a good film. Again, though, last time I'm going to mention it, yes, I am biased, and again, I'm showing my bias, but you are talking to someone who likes a lot of stuff from the mid-2000s, and it was because I was a kid during that time, and also, a lot of my favorite films of all time came from that decade anyways, like Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, what else? Whatever. Get my point. So, I don't care what people say. This is peak Star Wars, at least for me. And thankfully it got better with the 2008 Clone Wars, which I've already, gushed about before. All you guys need to know is that it is the best thing to come out of, the prequel era. No matter what people say about the actual movies themselves, people still love the Clone Wars TV show from 2008. And yeah, no, it's a great series. Go ahead and go watch it for yourselves. Granted, I know the pilot movie wasn't very good, and admittedly it was kind of it's kind of just insane to just compare it to the rest of the series, because my god, it is night and day. Go watch it. Especially since it introduces new characters like Ahsoka and Rex, and it brings back other characters, like Grievous and Ventress from the original Clone Wars. Brings her back here, fleshes her out, and has character arcs for her. Adds in a bunch of, amazing clone characters like Echo and Fives. And even just a lot more just, grounded, as much as it can be in a Star Wars thing, tone. So, go ahead and watch it. Especially since I am shocked that this was on Cartoon Network of all things. Because, goddamn, it gets actually way more violent than I remember it being as well. Holy shit. But yeah, I'm gonna get a bit of a water break. Goddamn. Oh shit, Goldie, what's up? Best prequel movie? Yeah, no, Revenge of the Sith is easily the best prequel movie. I don't care what people say. Like, again, I'm not like the type of person who, blindly fucking loves all the movies, because I'm not that. Like, I know there's people who are like that, but I'm not gonna lie, they don't know what they're talking about. But whatever. Anyways, so God damn. Okay, it's also getting really fucking hot. Again, I've mentioned this plenty of times before. Unfortunately, I have been living in a room that, unfortunately, by the time that it gets to summer, it gets really fucking hot. My cousins are gonna see if they can try to fix the ventilation in here, because it's starting to get more dire, especially since I'm no longer just visiting here for the summers. But whatever. Anyways, yeah, I think it's about time that we try to get some of these other tierings done, because this is actually taking slightly longer than I thought it would, but we should be able to get done with this in the next, 45 minutes. And yes, we're starting off with another thing we talked about before. Rebels. Honestly, I mean, my opinion hasn't really changed all that much since we talked about it on the Disney Channel tier list. I'm going to put this in Apprentice. Just a completely inferior show in comparison to the Clone Wars in basically every single way. Half the cast is annoying as hell. Like, honestly, Ezra and fucking Zeb are two of the most goddamn annoying characters ever. Although it kind of sucks though, because what's his face? God, not Jaden. Shit, or the fucking older Jedi's name. I forgot his name, but he's kind of cool. Hera's cool. Sabine, I mean, you already know my opinions on Sabine. They're cool, but that's not enough to save a show. Granted, I kind of wish it was only those three as the main characters, and also just more focused on what they were more interested in, because my god, the fucking battles in this goddamn show are so goddamn boring. And again, keep in mind, this is Disney's first foray into Star Wars media after the Disney buyout. So, take that for what you will. But, I mean, okay, to be fair, the other good things about this show is the whole Season 3 Maul stuff and Grand Moff Tarkin. Those are the only good things. Other than that, I wouldn't bother. So, whatever. Alright. Here we go. Next film. Alright. Force Awakens. So, I think that most people would agree that this is the best film to come out of the sequel trilogy. And I'm just going to be frank right now. The sequel trilogy, I am going to be a bit more harsh on. It's not me just blindly hating on it. I've got my reasons for it, because I've seen all of these next 5 films that we're going to talk about in theaters. And if you guys remember back in 2019, I did a full-on podcast episode on episode 9, but we'll get to that when we get to that. All I've got to say when it comes to the Disney sequel trilogy stuff is it was mostly just wasted potential. Which I know that might be a stereotypical thing to say, but it's especially apparent here because I wanted to like these characters. If I'm going to be honest, I really, really wanted to like Finn and Rey and Poe. And, there's hints of this film. If I am going to be honest, when I first saw this film, I thought this film was actually pretty good. Granted, it was probably because I haven't seen a Star Wars film in theaters in a long time. Obviously, Revenge of the Sith being that film. And so, like, and, seeing that there was a new Star Wars film, I was hyped for it. However, with the power of hindsight, and, I've rewatched this film multiple times, actually, and while I still think that it's fine, it's not up in Master or Chosen One. So, I think it's probably, if I'm going to be honest, it's probably the most middle of the road film. It is better than Episode 2. I will give it that. But I'm only going to put it at night because of a few things. Number one, the character building for Finn, Poe, and Rey was fine. And of course, Kylo. Let's not forget about Kylo, who, I'm just going to be frank right now, is the best character of the sequel trilogy by a fucking mile. That doesn't come from that doesn't come from previous media. Like, I know they tried doing the whole fucking, edgelord thing with him, which I know some people might have thought it was kind of tacky. And a part of me kind of feels like that too. But at least with him, it's supposed to kind of parallel with Anakin, his grandfather, where, it's more or less just the fact that he's following in his footsteps, or at least his footsteps whenever he was in the dark side. And that's an interesting parallel. Also, I will say this as well, at least in terms of just, I guess in terms of just scope, yeah, they were able to bring back the whole big scope thing. My main issue, though, with this film, though, is that it's essentially just a remake of A New Hope. Which I know that's a point that a lot of people bring up, but especially with the power of hindsight, that was not a good idea to do. They should have just made it more into its own original idea, which is what the prequels did. Say what you want about fucking Episode 1. I think Episode 1 is fucking terrible. At least it's more of an original story, though, as opposed to this film, which it's just a New Hope remake. So, I don't know. It is the best out of the sequel trilogy, but I still only think it's average. So that's why I'm putting it at night. Then we get to Rogue One. So, yes, this is the first spin-off film that isn't the Clone Wars movie. And, I mean, if Goalie's still in the chat, he's probably looking at me very tediously, though. So, okay, I will say this. Rogue One, I don't think is better than fucking... Well, yeah, it's not in Chosen One. I'm not saying that. But it is the best Disney film to come out of this entire fucking, past 10 years, though. Well, okay, let me explain. Hold on, I know. Liar! Let me explain. The reason why I actually think that Rogue One is actually somewhat good, as a matter of fact, I actually think it's actually surprisingly really good considering, the circumstances, is mostly just because this was the film that had the least involvement with Kathleen Kennedy. And not only that, but also, the whole fucking, overarching Star Wars thing. This was a self-contained story that, was supposed to at least somewhat explain the whole Death Star plan thing. Obviously, there's been other media that has been created in the past that explain the whole Death Star plans situation on, why they even have it in the first place. Dark Forces, we played before, had that same thing. Also, Star Wars Battlefront 2's Originals campaign had a similar setup as well. Um, but I think I appreciate this film more so just for the fact that this film was able to actually bring us some more interesting characters that like a lot of people only I feel like really take for granted. Like Cassian Andor, like he's more the straight man in this film, but there's a reason why he is the straight man, and he only sees that he has to get the job done. But by the time that he has to, make the ultimate sacrifice, he realized that like, yeah, no, like I needed to do this for a good cause. And not only that, but also like um just making this into more of like a war film as opposed to like a traditional Star Wars film. And don't get me wrong, war films are a bit kind of a taboo subject, at least considering that like a lot of war films, a lot of people consider to be about more like propaganda based, and they tend to fucking glorify war. And that while that tends to be the case for a lot of films, ironically enough, this film does not glorify that at all. As a matter of fact, like, yeah, it showcases that not only like are a lot of the conflicts involved like in the Star Wars universe, they can be really devastating, but also, yeah, no, it also showcases that there's even some rebels that aren't actually that good. And it sort of starts to blur the lines on like, if there's even anyone who's good in the first place. And that's something that I appreciate because, for the longest time, a lot of Star Wars media was basically just like, rebels good, Empire evil. And that was basically it. Or, at least at the beginning with, episode 2 with, the prequels, it was like Republic good, Separatists bad. However, Rogue One, like obviously, the Clone Wars conflict was sort of already getting blurred anyways, thanks to Revenge of the Sith and with the Clone Wars, to where, yeah, there's a lot more ambiguation than you would expect. But Rogue One was kind of that, but for the original trilogy era, or the era that takes place in, the Galactic Civil War era, for those who don't know what it's called. And yeah, it showcases that, yeah, some of the rebels, they're kind of pieces of shit. And I like that sort of more nuance being applied there. And also, for being one-time characters, or at least one-time characters initially, Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor, like, yeah, I think that for what story they were trying to tell, they were pretty effective in that. And also, like, with Jyn, she's not going to be around, but like they showcase that, yeah, unfortunately there's plenty of people who have lived their entire lives to the fullest, but then unfortunately they have to take a sacrifice that ultimately leads to their deaths. And yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is that I actually like that more grounded sort of storytelling. And that's why I think Rogue One is actually surprisingly really it's way better than it actually has any right to be. I'm not going to put it in Chosen One, but I'm going to put it in Master. This is what people are looking for when it comes to Star Wars, not what they're about to do, which is what I'm going to talk about. Because, and it sucks, like, because, like, I want there to be more thought-provoking media. And I want there to be more lines just sort of blurred and just, actually having consequences in your films, which is something that, like, modern Star Wars is just extremely allergic to for whatever reason. And it's so goddamn annoying, but whatever. At least there was a little bit of that at least initially. Unfortunately, though, that didn't last long. We gotta talk about fucking Last Jedi. God. Oh, God. So, this was the first film that I saw in theaters, at least with Star Wars related, where I was more confused. And more annoyed. Because Force Awakens was directed by J.J. Abrams, right? This film was directed by Rian Johnson. Need I say more about him? You guys probably already know the whole Ryan subvert your expectations Johnson memes. I don't need to repeat them. And if I'm just going to be frank, okay, I'm not even going to hide it. I'm putting this in Jar Jar Binks. God. This film is a confused fucking mess. And this is where, at least in my opinion, when the whole idea of Disney owning Star Wars started to go down the fucking rails. The third film in, and they were already starting to do this bad. Oh no. Oh fucking no. So, I mean, I can go on and on about just, the fact that, Rian Johnson thought it would be a good idea for, basically every 20 minutes in the film, what you thought was going to happen was going to completely change. I can go on and on about the fact that, they completely butchered Luke Skywalker's character. I can go on and on about the fact that, the whole subplot about them going to the casino planet was completely pointless. I can go on and on about the fact that, Snoke, the background villain of The Force Awakens, was completely made mute in this film, and he just ended up being a fucking, pointless, villain character. I can go on and on about the fact that, this film tried to do a bit more of that Marvel humor that I always found to be really fucking annoying. But here's why this is actually even more so going into, specifically at the lower tier. This film basically treated Star Wars fans as if they were fucking idiots. As if, they were, a bunch of spoiled fucking brats that needed to be fucking, they needed, basically, it was basically treating, anyone who liked Star Wars as if they were just a bunch of fucking, idiots. Haha, you didn't expect that was gonna happen. Haha, you don't get an explanation for that. Haha, it basically just gave the middle finger to everyone who liked, anything Star Wars related. It didn't even matter if you liked the new stuff, didn't matter if you liked the original trilogy, didn't matter if you liked the prequels. And that to me is extremely insulting, especially as someone who holds this franchise dearly to my heart. So, and again, I can also go on and on about all the drama involving this film, especially after the fucking release. Jesus Christ. But all I've just got to say is, this is a bad film. I know there's some people who like this film. I'm not going to specifically judge you for that. But do keep in mind this, though. This was the beginning of when everything started to get really bad. And yeah, I don't think I'll ever, frankly, I don't think I'll ever forgive Rian Johnson for doing that. Because, dude, what were you doing? Why'd you think that was a good idea? Because, did you not know that, Star Wars fans are like Zelda fans, where, they give a shit about, more lore-driven stuff. And not only that, but also, I hate to break it to you, but, if you think that Star Wars fans are nothing but a bunch of spoiled brats, you're just talking about a small minority of them. Yeah, there's some fucking weird-ass people on the internet who, are Star Wars fans. But guess what? That's with every fandom. Yeah, Star Wars, Marvel, FNAF, Halo, Call of Duty, what else? Harry Potter, Jurassic Park / World, fucking what else? I name you any sort of band fandom, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, 21 Pilots. They all have their fucking weirdos. Just ignore those types of people, and then just Just ignore them. That's how you fucking like, get them to stop doing that. So you can't just treat everyone as if they're that. Otherwise, you're gonna lead to people like you're just gonna like justify their positions, and that's gonna cause even more fucking bullshit. So, but point is that with this film, it's just straight up a bad film, and yeah, I get so fucking annoyed every time that like someone brings a film up, but whatever. At the end of the day, what happened happened. Surprisingly, though, this isn't even the worst film, but we'll get to that. Right now, let's get to Solo. Going into this film, I knew this was going to be really fucking dumb. Because, again, like, did we really need a Han Solo film? Did we need to have a film talking about his backstory? Because we already knew what he was in the original trilogy. Like, we didn't need to go like further back to explain, oh, how does he know Chewbacca? Like, granted, I will say this. I rewatched this recently, and while I'm not as soured as I was when I first saw it in theaters, I'm still gonna put it in Apprentice. It's a completely pointless film. I know there's some people who defend it, but like after that fucking okay, what was the fucking? Oh yeah, the whole fucking point of the movie is that like Han was trying to basically he wanted to get off the fucking planet. Like he got off of his home planet, but he wanted to go back for the love of his life, which meant for him to like basically get into a crime ring job. Problem is, turns out that the person that he had high respects for already got out through other means. And so he got put into a job that he doesn't need to do anymore. But, like, he's put in debt to do anyways. So, and yeah, so, like, that alone was already just kind of. I don't know. I really don't like it whenever the movie gets resolved halfway through the film, but then they have to do the rest of the film anyways. Like that always annoys the fuck out of me when a movie does that. Cuz it's like, dude, you're just wasting time. Like, and of course they have to add, story justifications for why they have to do that shit anyways, and it's such a goddamn annoying mess. Also, this film completely ruins the. Okay, it doesn't completely ruin. I don't want to fucking be dramatic like that, but like it really does take away a lot of just the rumors that Han Solo was making in the original film, like the whole him making the space jump in 12 parsecs that he mentioned, like people basically that was more up to interpretation whether he was just fucking lying and just trying to, seem like he was just a bit of a fucking smartass or something, or if he was like genuinely true and he just wants to brag about it. Well, the way that they showcase that in this film is kind of ludicrous. They should be fucking dead. Because, well, they do the whole light speed skipping thing. They did the light speed skip in this film. And granted, to be fair, they only did it once in this film, but considering that in the original film that they talk about how hyperspeed skipping is extremely dangerous, I don't know. I don't like that expression. Also, it doesn't help the fact that I know Daniel Glover plays as Lando in this film. Which, by the way, I didn't mention Lando in Empire: Return of the Jedi. Massively underrated character. He's great. But like he kind of has a character shift in this film. Like he just feels more like a college fucking dropout rich kid. which is not really like the vibe I got from Lando in the previous films. I saw him more as like just I was like more of like a stoic aristocratic type, or at least like sort of some sort of representative, not like some like college drop, not necessarily like a college dropout, but like a rich, daddy's boy dropout. Like that's the vibe I got. Again, no disrespect to Daniel Glover. It's not his fault. It's the writer's fault. It's the director's fault in that. Because again, what Daniel Glover had to work with, he did his best. But unfortunately, you can't save the shitty script, and there's some cringy dialogue in this film. Like, I'm surprised that people dog on Attack the Clones' dialogue a lot, but they fucking defend this film. Like, dude, this had some fucking terrible goddamn dialogue. Like, ugh. So, but yeah, whatever. Long story short, this film is... I don't like this. I really don't like this film. Like, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, let alone it's not even the worst Star Wars film I've ever seen, but it just feels pointless. It just feels like seriously, after I watched this film in theaters, I just felt like I wasted my time. So, but whatever. Let's get on with a few shows before we talk about the fucking thing, which unfortunately we have to talk about another fucking thing, and that's the Star Wars Resistance, which I've mentioned before is literally one of the worst shows I've ever seen in my life. So of course you know exactly where it's going. It's going in the Jar Jar Binks category. Need I say more than what I said in our Disney Channel tier list? It is not only the worst Star Wars animated show I've ever seen, it's probably one of the worst animated shows I've ever seen, period. Especially considering that the main character is one of those overly enthusiastic characters who doesn't shut the fuck up. The animation style looks almost unfinished. Like, it has that weird, like, 3D, like it I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to make the show look like an anime, but like 3D. But like, because, obviously Dave Filoni worked on this show. He also worked on Clone Wars and Rebels, and he worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, obviously a really good track record right there, right? Well, problem is that there are some animation styles that do not translate over to 3D very well. And, well, in this case, this is one of them. And, yeah, the show looks ugly as fuck. It looks way too fucking bright. And the story itself is just so goddamn just boring to fucking, go through. It is not worth your time. Do not watch this show. I am warning you guys right now on this very stream. Do not watch it. You will you may go insane if you watch this show. So, don't watch it. So, God, it's fucking terrible. Hey, Mason is cows. Welcome back to the stream. I'm going to watch it. Don't watch it! It's actually terrible. Like, Jesus Christ, it's actually one of the worst things I've ever seen. At least by a main studio. Obviously, there's worse animated, content out there. But in terms of, ones made by big budget studios, this one's really bad. Jesus Christ. Okay, whatever. Whatever. Okay, let's talk about Mandalorian. So, Mandalorian. So, I will fully admit that Season 1 of Mandalorian was actually pretty solid. Oh, and by the way, we're not... if you guys couldn't tell already, we're not separating these by season. That's extremely disingenuous if you fucking, try to, separate them by season. Especially since every other, show tier list that I've done, I've done them for where they're the entire, show. Because you have to, this is where my rule of, the whole thing has to apply Like, well, you have to judge it by the whole thing actually applies. When it comes to movie trilogies, it's more appropriate to look at the movies individually because, of the length of the films themselves and how they stand on their own. If you do that with a season, that's a bit... Like, if you do that with a show, like, it's a bit harder considering that it's more interconnected. You can only split by season if it's only about that. No, that's what I'm saying. You can't do that with a show because the show is more interconnected than a movie. Because like if like a movie is more like a singular story, whereas a show is more an arc is more like an arc of stories. So that's why I'm judging the movies and the shows differently. But anyways, going back to what I was saying with Mandalorian. Season 1, Mandalorian, I thought was actually surprisingly really good. Granted, there's some things I have issues with it. And honestly, there's some issues I have with it. And all that. Like, I still have issues with some of the stuff, but it's fine. Season 2, admittedly, did drop things a little bit. But I thought it was still serviceable. I thought it was a fine season. And, at the end of the day, yeah, it was fine. That's pretty much all I'd have to say about it, though. Granted, it's been a couple years since I've seen season 2. Like, I haven't seen it since the last episode of season 2 came out. And then season 3, I will fully admit this, though. I have not seen season 3 yet. I don't know if I really want to, though, because I've heard not very good things about it. However, if I am going to be honest as well, my biggest issue with Mandalorian, ironically enough, and this is going to piss some people off, but I don't care. The Baby Yoda storyline overstayed its welcome. I'm sorry. I never liked Baby Yoda to begin with. Granted, you are talking to someone who doesn't necessarily like a lot of kid characters anyways. Like, even a lot of shows that I fucking love, I just don't really care about, that stuff. And it just felt more like it made the show turn into, like, a fetch quest. Like, basically, yeah, or, like, a escort quest, rather than, like, a proper character story arc. Because, like, Baby Yoda doesn't really have, like, you can't really, like, it's not like, you're dealing with, like, a small kid. Or, like, a kid that's able to, like, talk and shit. Because, like, you can't really, like, develop a character with that. And so, like, even though, like, there's some, like, I guess, character growth moments that do happen with Grogu, not just in this show, but also in Book of Boba Fett, which we'll talk about that fucking thing later. The scope of it is just so small. Like you can't really, do, like, much involving that, man. Like, it's not as thorough, is basically what I'm trying to say. So, I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, that kind of distracted me, at least from, like, loving this show. Like, granted, I never hated the show, like, ever. But, like, it was just kind of whatever. Though, and also, the other issue that I do have with the show, granted, is some of the drama that happened with the show. I don't want to get into the drama that happened with the show. All you need to know is that a certain actor or actress, actually, I think a couple, basically, fucking, like, did some, they basically went insane on Twitter. They did the same thing that the fucking lead singer of Trapped and Skillet did, where they they went ape shit, and Jesus Christ, it was the worst fucking thing ever. And that caused a lot of controversy. And so because of that, it's kind of hard for me to want to rewatch like any of these earlier seasons, anyways. So, oh, she was worse. It wasn't just that; it was way fucking worse. I'm not gonna fucking repeat any of. I'm not gonna fucking like. Just go look it up yourselves. All you need to know is that like she went down the fucking deep end. And Jesus Christ, like it was one of the it was a terrible week to be alive. That's all I've got to say about that. So, unfortunately, because of all that bullshit, I had to put this tonight. And even if that drama wasn't involved, even if that drama wasn't involved, I'm not gonna lie, it seems like season 3 is already kind of going down the deep end anyways, so it seems like this show is starting to go down the shitter. Which sucks, because, there's some good elements in this show. And some cool, like, growth with, the Mandalorian himself. Like, Pedro Pascal, like, I fucking love Pedro Pascal. But goddamn, like, what he's got to work with now, I am so sorry for him. So... And I'm sorry that he had to deal with any fucking bullshit he had to deal with involving whatever is going on behind the scenes. So, all I gotta say is good luck. But... There's also one particular thing that I actually don't like about this show that does kind of break Star Wars lore. Let's just say that there is Grogu, Baby Yoda, somehow has the ability to force heal, which breaks so much fucking shit, and it partially broke what we're about to talk about now. Rise of Skywalker. Need I say more? Need I say more than what I did back in 2019? This film was awful. Not only is this one of the worst films this was the first film that after finishing it, I was actively pissed off after I saw it. Like, holy shit, was this really bad. And again, I remember after I saw it, I did a full-on podcast episode just talking about this film specifically. I think it was episode 12. Episode 12 of the podcast. And I even took notes on that movie. Shit, I think I still have my notes with me. Yeah, I still have the notes that I have for this film from back in 2019. Yeah, because I wrote this shit down. Where is it? Shit. Oh, is it back there? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Because I had it somewhere. Oh, it's over here. Yeah, it's over here. Yeah, you guys remember this fucking journal? Yeah. Yeah. This fucking page, I still have these notes. It scarred me that fucking bad. That I need, like, God. But yeah, you get the point. All I've got to say is that this film is one of the worst films. It's one of the worst films that I've seen in recent years. And not only that, but also, again, similar to Last Jedi, it is basically just a huge insult to, like, anyone who's a fan of Star Wars. Like, I always talk about plot holes in movies. And, like, TV shows and video games. Why? Because this was the movie that really opened my eyes with how you have to be consistent with your fucking story. Otherwise, people are going to notice the cracks, and it's going to make your film look even worse. And on top of all the fucking plot holes, there's also all of the fucking bullshit involving, like, a lot of weird dialogue choices, even fucking worse than, like, Solo. And again, it relies so much, even more so than Phantom Menace, on plot convenience. Upon plot convenience, within plot conveniences. Like, it's literally, it's plot convenience, the movie. And I'm just gonna be frank, like, this movie almost broke me. Like, it was that upsetting. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna add a new tier. Yeah, I think I'm gonna replace the haven't seen tier, and I'm gonna do something that I didn't think I would actually say. There. Not only is this bad, I consider this to be a direct insult to cinema. I have not seen... Okay, granted, I have seen way worse movies than this. Like, I would be lying to you if this is the worst film I've ever seen, because it's not. Like, and there are objectively way worse films than it. But the problem with this film is that this is the prime example of a big budget film that is no substance, disregards any sense of, like, planned out logic, and basically treats the fans as if, well, I don't want to talk about this film. I already went on a full-on rant. I went on multiple rants in the past, like, 3.5 years about this film. I don't want to feel like I'm repeating myself. All I've got to say is that this film is, like, genuinely, like I said, just in terms of just story structure, it's one of the worst films that, at least, it's one of the worst mainstream blockbuster films. And it's sad to see that this was the end, or at least the end of the mainline Star Wars movies. Granted, I know there's gonna be more fucking movies. I mean, it's gonna happen. There's gonna be new movies. But there's rumors that there's gonna be a sequel trilogy after this. They're gonna make episode 10.
What a shame.
What a shame it is, JC Denton. What a fucking shame it is. Oh, God. You probably tell I'm already I'm a broken man right now. I am very fucking broken. But you get it. This film is just straight up...
It's not good.
It's bad. It's bad. It's not good. It's not good. Oh, God. God. Hey, do you like how I used that, like, again? I reused Fantano. No one cared? Oh. Wait, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, we're talking about how shitty Rise of Skywalker is. Oh, yeah, not good. Bad. You guys already know. I'm not gonna repeat myself. So, I just want to finish this. I just want to fucking finish this tier list. So, let's just, well, we're gonna finish it. Let's finish these, shows here. So, Bad Batch. This came out around this time 2 years ago. And I will say this. This is actually probably the best animated show that... No. That honor goes to, like, this show, but we'll talk about that later. Bad Batch, I've only seen season 1. I have not seen season 2, but from what I've seen with season 1, it's better than Rebels, But man, it just does not click. It's missing a few things. Like I think it's specifically missing like true like character just dynamic. Like it's so like character anemic, as a matter of fact. Like, what do I mean by that? So basically, this show is about the Bad Batch. Basically, a bunch of clones who basically special forces, right? They have like some sort of genetic alteration that enhances like one specific ability. This is about the time. This is around the time when Order 66 occurs. Is whenever like the show, at least season 1, takes place. And well, let's just say that it focuses less on them and more on this character named Omega. God, I fucking hate Omega. Oh god. Okay. I already mentioned before I don't like kid characters. Or usually that's the case. Obviously there is exceptions to the rule. I would be lying to you if Hey Arnold wasn't one of my favorite shows of all time. And, obviously any sort of action teenage like hero show I love, whether it be Danny Phantom, Avatar, My Teenage Robot, Kim Possible. Like, it's just a trope I like. And like even like some other like show, even just like some other like characters that are like good characters, like Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone. Great character by Macaulay Culkin at the time. Obviously he's an adult now, but still. But man, this Omega represents everything what I think is wrong with like kid characters, especially kid characters in like, media like this. And man, it just she's just an annoying like just sort of brat in this show. Like granted like again, it also has the Mandalorian problem where it's more of an it's more of an escort mission to figure out what she's involved with rather than it being about the other characters. And may I remind you that this show is called The Bad Batch? The clones that are around Omega? But, whatever. I mean, whatever. I mean, other than that, though, the actual show itself is fine. Hell, there was even an episode that actually it barely even featured the Bad Batch. And it was kind of like a predecessor episode to what would happen in Rebels that I thought was actually like the best episode of the entire show so far. So I don't know. It's average. I'll put it a night. If I decide to watch season 2, then like maybe it gets better. I heard season 2 was way better, but I don't know. I don't think I care too much to watch it though. That's just me though. All right. Speaking of things that are just going to be in the middle, Star Wars Visions. This is basically if Star Wars was an anime, or well, anime plus, because it's basically basically a bunch of anime studios, Japanese animation studios, were basically hired by Disney to work on their own like sort of self-contained stories, heavily inspired by the Star Wars universe. And to be fair, there's actually some really cool episodes and like really cool like concepts. Like for example, there's this one episode that takes place in like an alternate universe where there's like this like dark Jedi who goes up against like this Inquisitor character. And that episode was actually really damn good. Like I'm not gonna lie. And there was a few other episodes that were cool as well. I can't think of the ones off the top of my head. That was just the one that I remember the most. And yeah, that was actually pretty good. Unfortunately, though, it's a hit or miss situation where because the other one that lives rent free in my head was this like fake Star Wars band episode, and it was the most average, just sort of like band drama thing you'd ever see. And considering that this is the Star Wars universe, you can probably expect the music to just be kind of weird anyways. So, yeah, it's pretty hit or miss. I'm going to put this at night. There's some good stuff from it, but there's also some bad stuff. Also, you are talking to someone who's not really the biggest fan of anime anyways. The only anime that I actually genuinely liked was Death Note and Black Butler, but like other than those two, I don't really give a shit about like anime. Not to say that you can't enjoy anime, it's just not my thing. That's more of my friend Saimori's thing. So, yeah. But that is what it is. Oh god, Book of Boba Fett. If we couldn't already tell, I fucking hate this show. I'm putting in Jar Jar Binks. It is so bad. It like it could have been cool. It could have been cool. Hell, this is actually what a lot of people thought what Mandalorian was supposed to be. People thought that it was supposed to be a Boba Fett show, but then people wanted an actual Boba Fett show, and well, they produced this. And also, dude, what a complete just trashing of a character here. I mean, granted, I wasn't one of those people who loved Boba Fett. Like, I was kind of one of those people who was just kind of indifferent about him, especially since like he doesn't really do anything in the actual original movies. But in the Clone Wars and like expanded universe, you know, he was someone who was not someone who was too forgiving per se. Though he was someone who was, you know, if there was like a clone, like someone who was a clone in danger, he would not kill them because, you know, he's a clone himself of his father. So, you know, he had respect for, you know, his clone brethren. But, you know, he was someone who, if he wanted to fucking kill someone, he would not hesitate to do so, especially if it was someone he had a personal vendetta against, specifically against Mace Windu and with Han Solo. So, he was, you know, kind of one of those, like, people who, you know, and also, like, you know, he was basically kind of a not war profiteer, but, like, he's a bounty hunter. So, like, he was more at it for a profit reason rather than, you know, for the genuine will of the people. Or at least that's what it would have been until Disney basically took all Jack Daniels' cocaine and thought it was a good idea to basically make him into, like, a dictator of Tatooine. So, or like, okay, they're trying to do a crime boss drama here with him, but it's the most generic crime boss drama you will ever fucking see. I mean, ask, like, again, like, I can guarantee you, Goldie has seen all the crime dramas, and if he were to see this show, he would probably cry in a corner, because this show is like an insult, not just to crime dramas, but also to just like all the other characters that they brought back for this show for no reason. Like, not for no reason, but like just wasted use of characters, especially with a lame ass fucking like a final fight at the end of season 1 that resolves way too fucking nice than it should have, especially for who they were going up against. And most of the season was just them just preparing for that fight, or it was just a bunch of flashbacks. So yeah, no, this show was just it also didn't help the fact that, like, halfway through, like in like the middle of the season, they decided to just bring back Mando and Baby Yoda for because just because makes it doesn't have to make sense why they just do, and they help in the fight even though they didn't need to. Okay. Which, by the way, oh yeah, they also brought back Luke and okay, well, Ahsoka was already in Mandalorian. That's not a secret, but she was also in this show. Both of them were in this show, which that's fine. Problem is, it's called The Book of Boba Fett, on which, by the way, Boba Fett is not in. Like, he is like halfway through the show. He's barely in his own show. Yeah, it's called The Book of Boba Fett, and half the show does not feature Boba Fett. This show's bad. Oh god, yeah, you get the point. This show's bad. It's awful. Don't watch it. You know what you should watch instead, though? Tales of the Jedi. I was actually thoroughly surprised with this one. I thought this was going to be another average, sort of animated show, especially considering that like they haven't had a big hit since the Clone Wars. But may I be damned, this is the best animated show that like has come out of the Disney era. I'm going to put this someone's probably watching me very tenuously, but I don't care. I'm going to put this in Master. The only reason why it does not go up in the chosen ones is, well, the first episode sucks ass. Don't watch the first episode. Just ignore it. It's... yeah. But all the Count Dooku episodes, because this is like another anthology series. Basically, it's... yeah, it's more backstory for certain characters, similar to like Solo, but the difference between this is that like, yeah, it's a dumb concept, but they actually executed it way fucking better than Solo did, and it actually made me actually start caring about Dooku, which rest in peace Christopher Lee, because yeah, no, I'm like, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm Team Dooku now. I'm Team Dooku. He got fucked over multiple times. So, yeah, like, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. If you guys want to, go out and watch episodes 2 through 6 of this, and you'll understand exactly what I mean. Like, there is a reason why, there is a reason why he turned to the dark side. He wasn't just some sort of like, it didn't just come out of nowhere. And I'm glad I'm glad this at least addressed that. Because a lot of people had questions of why he even turned to the dark side in the first place. I'm glad this addressed that. And not only that, but also like the other 2 Ahsoka episodes. Because again, it's an anthology where they're focusing on like the, Jedi, like, stories of like lesser known Jedi. Or Sith in Dooku's case, but whatever. And yeah, no, I like the other 2 Ahsoka episodes as well. So yeah, it's pretty nice. I recommend it. Unfortunately, though, this one is probably the one that stings the most for me. But we gotta talk about Obi-Wan. Oh boy. Oh god. Okay. Well, this is a predicament, isn't it? Well, I have a confession to say. I think this show was probably even more disappointing than The Rise of Skywalker, if I'm gonna be honest. And not only that, But also, this just makes me super upset with how they just completely, honestly, changed Obi-Wan's character. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, you guys already know where I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna put this in fucking. I'm putting in Jar Jar. This one's especially disappointing to me because, again, look at the shirt. Look at the shirt. Look at it. Anakin and Obi-Wan are my two favorite Star Wars characters. Period. And this show focuses on both Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. They even brought back Hayden Christensen to play as Vader in the suit and him in the flashback sequences. Which, again, I've already mentioned this earlier. Hayden Christensen is a fine actor. I don't think I don't think he's like a fucking terrible fucking like actor. He's not even a bad guy. Like, he's actually really chill. It's just a shame with the way that he was treated, obviously during the filmings of episode 2 and 3, but also just kind of post that through a bunch of fucking prequel hater guys and all that. And even just but even now with this show, man, the man can't catch a fucking break. Granted, he's not at the forefront of the show. Obviously, that is Ewan McGregor. But God, I feel even worse for him because, God, I fucking love Ewan McGregor. He's in terms of just individual actors, he's one of my personal favorite. If I'm gonna be honest, because he's super passionate about not just playing in Star Wars. He's a very passionate person when it comes to acting in general. And I have to give respect to someone who loves what they're doing and loves just being being able to do the best that he can, but being able to have fun with it. Cause he wants to whenever he wants to play a role, he tries to get the job done. And I've got massive props to him for that. There's no other I don't think, other than Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill and Ewan McGregor, I would say, are definitely the most passionate actors to come out of Star Wars. And I am so happy that, they were able to play as both of their respective roles. It's a damn shame, though, that the writers do not know who the fuck Obi-Wan is. Because they butchered his betrayal. Similarly to how in Last Jedi they completely misunderstood Luke's character by making him a shitty old man. They did the same thing here with Obi-Wan. Why? You did it once. Why you do it twice? With two of my favorite Star Wars characters too. Because again, Luke is my third favorite Star Wars character. Why do you why do you like making these characters into shitty old men? They weren't like that. Hell, fucking compare Alex Guinness in A New Hope, and then compare it to Ewan McGregor at the end of episode 3. That's a pretty reasonable, that's a pretty reasonable, evolution right there. But nope, apparently halfway through that entire goddamn story, Obi-Wan became a bit of a fucking asshole. Why? So yeah, no. Strike one right there. Strike two is the actually insulting cinematography in this film. Because, oh my god, there are some shots that look like, first year high school. film, like, fan films. I am not joking when I say that. Like, there are some moments that, like, are shot in a way that, like, you can clearly fucking tell that, like, either there were budget restraints or they had to, like, do way too many accommodations. Now, granted, part of that is also because of the other thing that was kind of annoying. They pulled a Mandalorian again, and they made this into another Fetch Quest series. This time with a young Princess Leia. Now, I'm not gonna dog on the girl who portrayed Leia in this show. It is not her fault, and again, she is a younger actor or actress, so I'm not gonna be, harsh on her. As a matter of fact, I'm actually gonna praise her because she's somehow better than everyone else in this film, or not this film, this fucking show. Like that fucking, like, the fact that Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers, that dude, like, why is he here? Like, his performance was fucking terrible. Also, that fucking Inquisitor lady, which, oh my god, don't even get me started with that bullshit, where she has a personal grudge against Obi-Wan because he wasn't there at the Jedi Temple in time. Like, bitch, why are you mad at him? He didn't have time for that shit. He was fighting General Grievous at that time. Were you fucking stupid? Like, Jesus Christ. And again, like, again, this is another show, like Book of Boba Fett, where they shifted Obi-Wan's character from being the main focus to this Inquisitor fucking lady who you can clearly tell they wanted to have her own fucking show and whatever. Hopefully that doesn't fucking happen. And then the most insulting thing about this show, this is the thing that actually made me fucking just stop giving a shit about, like, anything. This show breaks canon multiple fucking times. For example, well, obviously, everyone knows the famous line from A New Hope, when, like, right before, like, Obi-Wan and Vader fight, where it's like, Vader's like, when we last met, I was but the learner, now I am the master. And, well, that sort of line has officially been retconned here. Because, well, granted, they do explain why Obi-Wan knows that Vader is he knows that Anakin is Darth Vader. But here's the problem. They make Vader kick Obi-Wan's ass a lot in this show. Hell, even in their last confrontation, like, Obi-Wan gets his ass kicked. And I'm not gonna lie, that makes that line that makes that continuity way, way, way more rigid than it needs to be. But also, and this is the most insulting one, even though that Luke was supposed to grow up not knowing what a lightsaber is, he didn't even know what the Force was. The Inquisitor lady, thought it would be a good idea to go to Tatooine, find out where Luke is, and, tries to kill the Lars family where he's staying with, and shows her lightsaber right outside where Luke is. He's not supposed to know what a Jedi is, or a Sith, or a lightsaber, or anything like that. He's supposed to, like, live in ignorance until, like, God. Also, it's also I need to mention the fact that, like, the Inquisitor actually knows that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, which, again, no one's supposed to know that. Like, no one, like, that's the whole point of Vader's character, is that no one except for Palpatine knows who Darth Vader is. Like, that's the whole point of his, like, the why, like, he's like that, is to be an invoking presence that has the ability to have the Force while being somewhat of a faceless person that you can't track who it is. Like, they break the lore like, multiple fucking times. Like, and it's so fucking frustrating. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, did you not rewatch the fucking films? Like, this feels like it feels like this is just some sort of alternate universe now. Where, like, everyone knows who Vader is. And, Luke knows what a Jedi is. And, they have to fuck, like, it's so fucking bad. Like, again, this is why I don't blame anyone, like, who does think that, like, everything Disney related is not canon. Granted, I'm not the type of person who likes that sort of, like, mentality, because, again, people have that same mentality for Sly 4, and people have started to have that mentality for something like Security Breach with FNAF. Shit, even stuff like, what else? Even with Star Wars, people treated the prequels as if they were not canon. But if I'm gonna be honest, if it comes to if we're getting shit like this, I don't fucking blame anyone anymore. Because this show is actually terrible, and it actually breaks multiple pieces of canon. So, that's not even getting to any of the fucking dumb other parts about this show. Like that terrible fucking, like, Prison Break episode on that water moon. Which, yes, that's the same planet or moon, whatever, that was at the end of the first, at the end of Jedi Fallen Order. But man, that was a terrible fucking like, dude, where's a fucking blanket? I need a fucking blanket. Okay, Leia, we're good. Okay, Leia. Does that not look suspicious? Does that not look suspicious at all? Jesus Christ. Also, where the fuck? Okay, whatever. Plot holes aside, and plot contrivances aside, and lore breaking aside, this is probably the worst live action show that they've produced thus far. And if this is going to be the trend that we're going to see, I am not excited. Like, okay, it was already bad enough with the prequel, or not prequel, the sequel films. The fact that they're fucking up their live action shows as well, and their animated shows, really does showcase that, like, yeah, maybe George Lucas shouldn't have sold the rights to Disney, because, God, it's actually getting worse. It's getting worse every year, and that's sad. I wish that was not the case, but wow, it's that bad. Okay, thankfully we've got one more show though. We've got Andor, and thankfully we are actually ending on a positive note somehow, because somehow after this fucking mess, they come up with this. And dare I say, this is the best thing. This is the second best thing to... Oh, wait, no. Okay, this is the third best thing to come out of Disney Star Wars. I'm putting in a master. I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked. I thought this was going to be terrible. I thought this was going to be the worst... Like, going to be worse than Book of Boba Fett. No. It was surprisingly really damn good. It had, obviously it's a prequel of a prequel, but whatever. But it's, it dives into the character of Cassian Andor, thus the name. And, it sort of explains just sort of like why he's with the Rebel Alliance and all that, which again, normally I wouldn't like that. Like I said with Solo. However, not only did they like make his character really compelling, but also the characters that he's put around are also really damn interesting too. Like for example, that planetary security officer guy, I forgot his name. Like, he's not doing it because he has a personal vendetta. He genuinely believes like that him catching Cassian would show that people, like the average person, is gonna like would be able to do their job well in the name of like safety and security. And yeah, that's a pretty cool, like, an interesting motif that they were going for. Also, everyone has talked about the whole, like prison planet in this episode, like in this show, and it being probably one of the fucking creepiest things ever. And yeah, no, it's fucking creepy, that's for sure. But in a good way. Granted, I don't know if I'd say it fits Star Wars completely though, because like it's again, I like it whenever my media does take itself seriously, and I like it whenever like things do get dark. I think that was just a bit too dark though. Also, the reason why he even got like Andor even got arrested in the first place was fucking stupid, but whatever. I guess they were just trying to prove a point. But yeah, no, like I was thoroughly surprised. And the fact of the matter is that this was the show that they pushed the least for. Like, Disney like did not push as much marketing for. Hell, not many people saw this when it first came out. Like I was one of the few people who actually watched it when it came out. And like yeah, that's kind of sad that this had that like it had like a poor like launch, because this was actually one of the coolest shows ever. And again, it similar to Rogue One, it showcased that the rebels were kind of pieces of shit, but also it showcased that the average Imperial, like there's some like people in the Empire who aren't even bad people, who may, of course, they're on the Empire, so like obviously it's going to be bad anyways, but like they think they're doing the right thing. And I think that sort of blurring those lines, that's why I like Rogue One. And like so that like they can have more of those morality choices. And yeah, no, like this was surprisingly really damn good. It's a damn shame though that it did not get a lot of attention when it came out. And it's also an even bigger shame that like it took us fucking this long to get a live action TV show to be as good as this. So hopefully they can keep up the momentum, and just Disney, just whoever's directing this, please let them do what they're doing. Don't touch it, please. Like I swear, because like people like at this point, you're like, if you keep pumping out shit like Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, like we're gonna be in a tsunami of just the worst thing ever. So I know they won't. I'm just, a part of me just kind of hopes, because like I'm tired. I'm so goddamn fucking tired of like all of this bad shit that they've been making coming out, because it's either been average at best or it's been terrible at worst. So, and I think I want to like end it on this note that unfortunately, even though Andor has been like a recent positive, that has only been a fluke, like as of right now. And again, there's been a couple of other flukes, but there's been more bad than good. That at least whenever it comes to like the film and movie, like TV show sides of Star Wars.
And again, I rant about all of these because I am passionate about the franchise. I've been, obviously, like I said, I've been around this franchise ever since Revenge of the Sith came out. And, this franchise has shaped the way who I am now. And I am at least happy that George Lucas was able to create such a universe that not only has it heavily impacted me, but so many people around the world as well. And I have to directly thank him for that. I don't necessarily like everything that he has worked on, but there is one thing you can say about him. And that is he is creative and passionate about what he did. And, well, he's a fucking rich millionaire. Like, if he wasn't a rich millionaire before, he definitely is now, so that probably doesn't matter anymore. But at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, Star Wars has become something beyond just being a pop cultural phenomenon. It's become just a part of our history, like, human history in terms of media. And all we can really do is just try to cherish the things that were good. And shit, if somehow, Disney gets bankrupt or something, I don't fucking know. And they're forced to finally sell it to someone else, then, like, maybe things will turn around. Again, though, we're kind of in a bit of a oversaturation period, and that sucks, because I don't blame someone who is excited about the fact that there's been so much Star Wars content, but the reason why, Star Wars was special was because it was more sprinkled around rather than, like, huge just chunks of content. Not that that wasn't the case before, but, like, in comparison to what's coming out now, yeah, like, the first, like, 35 years of Star Wars existence, there were ups and downs, but at the very least, what was bad was quickly forgotten, and, what people liked is still being cherished. And, well, I don't think anyone can really take that away. So at the end of the day, I'm going to cherish, obviously, the stuff that's on the Chosen One stuff, like, on the Chosen One tier. And, of course, the original trilogy. Because they're goddamn awesome. And, again, I just, not even just think, like, George Lucas, just think, like, everyone, like, who has been a part of this franchise, whether it be Mark Hamill, Ewan McGregor, Harrison Ford, because, like, obviously whenever they made these movies, they were passionate about what they were doing. And in a lot of their cases as well, it helped them, skyrocket other careers. I mean, Mark Hamill has gone into a lot of voice acting stuff post, Star Wars, and that's really awesome. I'm glad that he was able to do that. Ewan McGregor has done a lot of more live action stuff. Harrison Ford, obviously, with Indiana Jones, but also with other things like Blade Runner and a bunch of, movies like The Hunt for Red October. So it helped, push the careers of many a great actor and actress. And also, like I said, helped set the standard for, science fiction and honestly just media as we know it as a whole. Granted, some for better and for worse. Like, you can definitely argue that, like, you can definitely make the case that because Star Wars has come out, like, it started to make every franchise, want to replicate it with lore stuff. But there's some good stuff that came out of that, though. Like, oh yeah, Adam Driver too. Yes, Adam Driver is under fucking rated outside of his fucking Star Wars stuff. Like, go watch any film that features him that isn't Star Wars. Like, he deserves way more recognition. But overall, I think that's ultimately what I'm just happy about, is that it at least helped push others to pursue their own creative endeavors. And it spawned, so many like careers and ideas for so many people. You know what? That's something that can't be taken away. That being said, though, that is going to be it for this tier list. Yes, this is a bit longer than I thought it was. I do apologize for that. Thankfully, this was under 3 hours, so I'm not complaining too much. But yeah, again, feel free to check out the other tier lists that I've done before in the past, whether it be on here or on the YouTube channel. Again, I will make sure that I get the FNAF character and Hitman tier lists uploaded by tomorrow. And yes, we'll do the podcast tomorrow. But yeah, that's gonna be exciting. If you want to check out some of my other stuff, make sure to hit that follow button down below and turn the bell icon if you're watching this on Twitch. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell icon. While you guys are at it, make sure to check out the links down below, specifically the Discord, SoundCloud, DeviantArt, Twitter, Humble Bundle, all that fun stuff. And if you guys haven't already on Twitch, you can hit that subscribe button over there. If you can't necessarily do that, that's completely fine. I'm just glad the guys jumped on and watched this. Regardless of all that, though, make sure to share YouTube and Twitch all around and continue to be awesome in the process. Until then, I will see you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.